What's up, slackers? Welcome to Book Cheats. Today we'll be talking about The Great Gatsby Chapter 5. And today's featured tie by request is a green tie with blue and silver stripes by Nautica. Let's get right into the chapter. So at the beginning of this chapter, Nick comes home from his meeting with Miss Baker. As he drives up to his house, he thought his house was on fire.
I said, oh Lord Jesus, it's a fire.
Because Gatsby had put up so many lights on his house that it lit up the whole neighborhood. Nick thought Gatsby was having a party, but as he drove up, he realized that nobody was there. As Nick pulls in, Gatsby comes up to Nick and asks Nick if he wants to go to Coney Island. Nick is super exhausted from all the stuff that happened that day, and so he tells Gatsby that it's too late. Gatsby then asks Nick if he wants to go swimming in his pool. Nick interrupts him and tells him that he needs to go to bed. Gatsby is obviously nervous about the meeting between Nick and Jordan, and he wants to know what happened. So after some awkward silence, Nick finally says that he talked to Jordan and that he's going to invite Daisy over for some tea. Nick asks Gatsby when he would like to do it, and Gatsby says that Nick can decide whenever. Nick says that they should do it the day after tomorrow, and Gatsby hints that he would like to cut Nick's grass before they have the meeting. The conversation gets really uncomfortable just because Gatsby is so nervous about what happens and meeting Daisy again, that Gatsby offers Nick a job because, quote, Nick is struggling with money, according to Gatsby. Nick was feeling really uncomfortable and declined. After some more awkward silence, Gatsby finally decides to go home. Next morning, Nick calls Daisy and sets up a day for her to come over. On the day that she was supposed to come over, it was raining, and one of Gatsby's servants came and cut the grass. Nick realized that he still needed cups, flowers, and lemons, and so he goes off to pick up that stuff. When Nick gets back, he realizes that he didn't need to get flowers because Gatsby had brought over a ton of flowers for the event. Gatsby comes over to Nick's house and he's fully decked out. He's got on a nice suit, nice clothes, but it looks like he hasn't slept all night because he has rings around his eyes. Gatsby asks Nick if they have everything they need, and Nick brings him over to the pantry to look at the food. As they're looking in the pantry, the Finnish woman Nick lives with walks by, and Gatsby looks at her in a stressed out way. It's really important for Gatsby that everything goes perfect. He's dreamt about this for 5 years. Nick and Gatsby wait for Daisy's arrival. Gatsby was super nervous, and with 2 minutes till the time that she was supposed to get there, he says that she isn't going to come and that he's going home. Nick and Gatsby hear Daisy pull into the driveway, and Nick goes out to greet her. Daisy is super nice as always and teases Nick and asks Nick if he's in love with her because he wouldn't let Tom come. Nick tells Daisy to tell her driver to disappear for an hour, which she does. She tells her driver, the butler with the jacked up nose, named Ferdy, to leave for an hour. When they enter the house, Gatsby was gone. As Nick and Daisy settle in, they hear a light knock at the door. It was Gatsby. When Nick answers the door, Gatsby looks into Nick's eyes, sort of in a way without hope, and he walks into the other room where Daisy's at while Nick waits in the kitchen. There was silence for a moment, and then Daisy broke the silence and said that she was certainly glad to see him again. There was another long pause, and Nick came into the room, and Gatsby finally spoke and said that we've met before. Gatsby accidentally knocks over a clock and catches it and apologizes to Nick.
Met before.
Daisy says sort of solemnly that they haven't met in years. Gatsby responds by saying 5 years next November. The sort of awkward tension in the room stabilizes, and the Finnish woman brings everybody tea. Daisy and Nick start chatting while Gatsby just looks back and forth at them as they talk. Nick had finally had enough of the awkward situation and made an excuse to leave. Gatsby immediately, out of desperation, asked Nick why he was leaving and said that he needed to talk to him for a second. They both head to the kitchen, and Gatsby says that this was a terrible, terrible mistake and that he shouldn't have done this and that everything was going wrong. Nick consoled him and told him that he was just embarrassed and that Daisy was embarrassed too. He told Gatsby that he was being rude and that he was leaving Daisy all there alone and that he needs to stop acting like a kid. Gatsby raised his hand to stop the lecture and headed back into the room. Nick snuck out of the house and waited by a tree for about a half hour. The rain finally stopped and Nick went back into the house. When he went back in, he tried to make a lot of noise in the kitchen, so that Gatsby and Daisy would know that he was there. Although despite his efforts, they didn't hear him. They're now both sitting on the same couch, looking into each other's eyes. Daisy's makeup had run because she had been crying. That awkward feeling had completely disappeared. When Nick came into the room, Daisy jumped and wiped the signs of tears from her eyes. Nick broke the silence by saying that the rain was gone. Gatsby invited Nick to join him and Daisy to tour his mansion. Nick and Gatsby waited outside for Daisy to wipe her tears and get her makeup fixed. And as they were waiting, Gatsby admired his own house. He told Nick that it took him 3 years of work to pay for it. Nick was surprised because he thought he had inherited plenty of money to where he didn't have to work. Gatsby told Nick that he lost a lot of his money from the pre-war crash and that he had been in the oil and drug business, but that he was doing something different now. Gatsby reminded Nick about the job that he had offered him. And when Nick was about to respond, Daisy finally came out. Daisy asked Gatsby why he lived in such a big house when he was just a single guy. Gatsby said that he constantly had the house filled with amazing people. As Gatsby took them around the house, he seemed to revalue his possessions according to how Daisy reacted to them. Gatsby went into sort of a third mood, from his first mood being nervous and scared, his second mood being loving and affectionate. His third mood was sort of shock and wonder that Daisy was actually there. When Gatsby showed them his room, he started showing them his really nice shirts. Daisy started to cry and said that she had never seen such nice shirts before. Gatsby takes them outside and comments that he can see Daisy's house across the bay and that they put a green light on at night. Nick and Daisy realized what that green light meant to Gatsby over the last 5 years. Every time he would look out at that green light, it was thinking of Daisy and thinking of this moment when they would meet. But now the green light wouldn't mean the same thing to Gatsby, because Daisy was actually there in front of him. Nick was sort of memorized by a picture of Gatsby and his old best friend on a yacht. Nick comments that his best friend's name was Dan Cody and that he passed away. The phone rang and Gatsby entered the conversation quickly by telling the guy not to hire a certain guy. Nick tried to leave, but they wouldn't let him. Nick was sort of their safety net because she was still married, so that they felt more comfortable in his house. Gatsby got one of the workers to play the piano, and Gatsby wondered if Nick was a little disappointed at the events of the evening. He knows that everything went almost as well as he could have imagined, but Gatsby had been dreaming about this event for 5 years, and that when you think about something for 5 years, usually things don't live up to your expectations. It was time to go, and Gatsby and Daisy were just gazing into each other's eyes, as if Nick wasn't even there. So Nick decided to sneak out, and he left. And that concludes the chapter. Thanks so much for watching Book Cheats. Please leave a like and subscribe. If you have any suggestions for my next tie, please leave a comment down below. And if you have any questions from your homework, I'd be happy to answer them. Have a great day, and slack on.
Give it to me.